Thank you. Thank you for having me. Well, good morning. I have to say, when I heard the remarks were at 7:40, I wasn't sure what the turnout would be. And I am so impressed. We have a nearly full room here, and I think that really speaks to your energy and your enthusiasm, and I hope your readiness to do great work on behalf of the American people and the American workforce. So thank you for being here. Thank you. I want to share a few thoughts about that workforce. It's the world's greatest workforce, the American workforce. As state legislators, you have an incredibly important job. You set the tone. You stand for the liberty-protecting principle of limited government. You believe in the power of free markets to raise economic standing of individuals. You believe that government should be efficient, effective, and accountable to the people. And you also have a very important perspective. State and local voices should and must be considered in any regulatory proposal at the federal level. You know, at the federal level, we issue notice and comments requests, and I would encourage you to provide your input because this administration is looking to reconsider many rules in the coming years, and your voices as state and local leaders is incredibly important. Today, I want to discuss the topic of occupational licensing, a topic that I know is well known to ALEC. But before I do so, I'd like to provide some update on our recent efforts on behalf of the American workforce. First, the Department of Labor has submitted a request for information regarding the overtime rule. As many of you know, the overtime rule was originally... Yes, go ahead. The overtime rule was originally written in 2004. There is no doubt that life has become more costly, and an update to that rule is required. The way the rule was changed, however, has created a shock to the system. That shock is particularly hard felt in many parts of our heartland, by nonprofit institutions, by universities. The request for information will provide you the opportunity to share your thoughts as we reconsider this rule. Second, the Department of Labor has rescinded guidance documents on several matters. As you know, the administrative state has grown and grown and grown in power, and it has seized far too much power. The use of guidance documents to broadly impact rights and responsibilities rather than formal lawmaking or rulemaking deprives individuals like you and your constituents the opportunity to voice your concerns. The guidance on joint employer, for example, substantially impacts franchises and small businesses around this nation. Yet this guidance was issued without public process. That is why we have rescinded the guidance on joint employer and other guidances like it. Fundamental questions affecting workplace arrangements should be answered by elected officials who are directly responsible to the American people and not by executive overreach. Third, President Trump personally announced the Apprenticeship Initiative. You'll hear much about the Apprenticeship Initiative over the next year. As you know, we have nearly 6 million open jobs in our nation. Americans want to work. American companies want to hire. Yet we have a mismatch between the skills the workplace demands and the skills our educational institutions provide for our workforce. When education fails to focus on workplace skills, education fails our students and our workforce. The apprenticeship model encompasses demand-driven education by providing skills that actually lead to a job. The apprenticeship model also provides an opportunity for individuals to earn while they learn, allowing students to avoid the crushing debt too often associated with higher education and student loans. You know, earlier this year, I attended the G20 Conference of Labor Ministers. And it struck me that each of the labor ministers, the other 19 labor ministers, all raised the same issue, the challenge of closing the skills gap. Imagine what an incredible competitive advantage we would have here in the United States if our educational institutions focus on workplace skills and provide the American workforce with the skills needed to address this skills gap. Imagine how much competitive our nation would be. That needs to happen. Those are just a few of our recent efforts. Yet today I'd like to discuss a new and important topic that I want to address more in the coming months, and that's occupational licensing. Let me ask this question. Do we have anyone here from Maryland? Maryland, anyone? Maryland. So I am sorry to say that I have here the application for fortune-telling license issued in Maryland. It requires payment of a fee of $393.75 in order to tell fortunes. In addition, you have to provide 3 references from non-related persons certifying good character and responsibility. So we need to make sure that we've got integrity in fortune-telling. This morning, and you can't ask for better coincidences. This morning, I awoke to an article on Drudge. The headline was this: pet lovers rage over law that bans dog sitting without license. So it turns out that an innovative entrepreneur developed an app that allows you to find neighbors that are willing to watch your pet or your dog while you're gone over the weekend. And individuals objected. And so now New York requires a license to pet sit. And a violation of that starts at $1,000. So these are just but 2 examples, and they're humorous examples, but the humor shouldn't overcome the importance of this issue. Occupational licensing hinders the American workforce, but it does provide one wonderful thing. It provides legislators like you the opportunity to engage in principled reform to help the American workforce. The growth of occupational licensing, unfortunately, is part of a nationwide trend where we regulate and we regulate and we regulate. In 1950, the Code of Federal Regulation ran about 10,000 pages long. Today, it has ballooned to more than 180,000 pages. In 1950, only 1 in 20 jobs required a license. Today, more than 1 in 4, actually almost 1 in 3 jobs in America requires a license to perform. Think about that. Almost 1 in 3 requires an occupational license. Fortune-telling, pet sitting, etc. Now, granted, licenses have valid reasons, particularly when they focus on health and safety. Certifying skills and specialized knowledge helps consumers. If you're in need of a heart surgeon, you want a doctor whose license certifies skills and knowledge. But that is far different from using licenses to limit competition, to bar entry, to create a privileged class, or to prevent people who want to work and to have the skills to do the job from actually working. Excessive license hinders the American workforce. First, the cost and complexity of licensing creates an economic barrier for Americans seeking a job, especially those with fewer financial resources. Second, excessive licensing creates a barrier for Americans that move state to state. And third, it creates a barrier for Americans looking to leverage technology to expand their job opportunities. And so I want to talk about each of these a little bit. Turning to the first, excessive licensing imposes direct and significant economic costs on job seekers. The financial costs are obvious. Some licensing applications cost thousands of dollars. The cost in terms of time is at least as high. The national average time required for a cosmetology license is 370 days. Some states require nearly 500 days to become a licensed cosmetologist. For an American living paycheck to paycheck, investing time and money to obtain a license so that they can work is a substantial burden. And so the question is this burden really justified? The Mercatus Center at George Mason, a center that most of you, I hope, are familiar with, looked at licensing in the field of opticians. Now, opticians, in contrast to optometrists, aid consumers in selecting and fitting the eyeglass. They don't determine your prescription. Only 21 states require that an optician be licensed. Utah, for example, does not require a license. Nevada, by contrast, requires more than 1,000 days of education. Sorry, I see some folks, I think you're from Nevada, sorry. Requires more than 1,000 days of education to obtain a license to be an optician. Now, here's the amazing thing. These states are adjacent, and so they're easy to study, and that's what the Mercatus Center did. And they found no observable difference in the quality of service between these two adjacent states. So if that is true, is the cost of 1,000 days of education justified? Or does it simply impose an unreasonable burden on good, hardworking Americans that just want to work? A related issue is the barrier to workforce mobility that arises from license differences among the states. When a member of our military is reassigned from one base to another and crosses state lines, his or her spouse often moves as well. The same is true when a civilian finds another job or is likewise reassigned. The spouse often moves as well. And this presents a problem for that spouse. Does the spouse move and potentially give up his or her chosen career, his or her job, and just stay at home until they can regain a license? Does the spouse stay behind, creating a distance in the family structure? By the most recent estimate, there are 60 occupations that are licensed in every state, but there are more than 1,100 occupations that are regulated in at least one state. Millions of Americans move across state borders each and every year. And when they move, each and every one of them, and particularly the spouse, faces this question. Does he or she enroll in duplicative education or await an unnecessary license? Or does he or she simply stay home and give up and not work? That's not right. Now, as technology changes, the barriers created by needed licensing become more and more costly. We've all heard of telemedicine and how it offers new opportunities for nurses and physicians, particularly in rural areas of our nation. 22 states have come together to form the Interstate Medical Licensure Compact. Yet some of the largest states, California, Texas, New York, and Florida, are not involved. We recognize the importance of telemedicine, yet we overlook many other careers that could equally benefit from technology and that can provide access across state lines. Interior design and other consulting services, for example, could easily be offered online. Our goal should be to expand opportunities for Americans and not to limit them. All told, the costs of these barriers are real and measurable. The Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis did a study, and it estimated that licensing requirements reduce the total non-farm payroll by 1.3% nationwide. We celebrate when there's a 0.2% reduction in the unemployment rate. Yet the licensing requirements in the states represented here, according to the Federal Reserve, cause 1.3% of our labor force to not be at work while they get duplicative education, while they await their license, or while they simply give up. Put differently, 2 million Americans don't hold a job or have given up in their career. Deadweight loss, $13 billion annually. Misallocation of resources, $170 billion. The numbers are staggering, and they're unacceptable. That's the Federal Reserve Bank study. Now, let's look at some others. Brookings says the Federal Reserve Bank is wrong. It's not 2 million Americans, it's actually 3 million Americans nationwide that don't have jobs. So think about that. Now, to be sure, your states are working on solutions. Michigan, a few years ago, limited 7 licensing requirements. Texas deregulated hair braiding, as have Iowa and Kentucky. Arizona enacted a package of licensing reforms, including the elimination of a license for landscape architects. Senators Mike Lee and Ben Sasse introduced the ALLOW Act that would reform licensing within the District of Columbia and act as a model for the states. These are just a few of the many ways that states are addressing excessive licensing. But that's small. 2 to 3 million people, 1.3% of the workforce. Elimination of 7 licenses is just not enough. Much more action is needed. Taking up this issue is one way that you, as legislators, can have immediate, consequential, and measurable impact. You have a substantial opportunity to help create millions of jobs without spending a single dime. The Trump administration is committed to working with you to strengthen our economy and to empower the American workforce. Americans want principled, broad-based reform. If licenses are unnecessary, eliminate them. If they are needed for health and safety, streamline them. And if they're honored by one state, consider honoring them in your own state. Do you need a different requirement, or can you have reciprocity? Americans looking to enter the workforce deserve no less than our and your most ardent efforts in removing the regulatory barriers so that they can have a job. Thank you.